Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Midwest Conversation. Just wanted to say before we get started, thanks for watching. Thanks for sticking with me in this time. It's kind of crazy, and I'm working on putting out more content. If you want to stay up to date, you can follow me on Twitter. I'll put that link in the description, Instagram as well. You can also subscribe to this channel on YouTube or also on Substack. I will put the links to both of those in the description as well. Thanks. Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of A Midwest Conversation. Wanted to make this video today because I saw something kind of shocking the last couple of days. It is about new laws that are being introduced in 34 states. A total of 81 laws so far in 2021, just this year, have been introduced. All of them, I believe, are over 95% of them have been introduced by Republicans at the state level. Essentially, these laws are going to, in my view and a lot of people's views online, get in the way of the First Amendment right to protest. A lot of these laws are, quote from the Florida governor, he says they are anti-riot laws. Florida is one of the states involved, which is it's just not true because almost every state already has anti-riot laws. But essentially, these laws make it easier for police to arrest and charge protesters. In some states, they grant immunity to drivers that hit protesters with their car, and a load of other things. So I wanted to cover first Ohio, which is my home state. So the state of Ohio currently has one law that is already in effect. It was introduced on the 12th of February of 2019, and it was signed this year in January, early in the year. Essentially, it prohibits people from protesting near, quote, critical infrastructure. And the law specifically identifies critical infrastructure as oil and gas pipelines. They don't specifically state any other critical infrastructure, but it does say and other critical infrastructure. A criminal trespass, a first-degree misdemeanor, would be punishable up to 6 months in jail and $1,000 fine. Now, if you are tampering with the facility, or you have the intent to tamper with the facility, the first-degree misdemeanor gets upgraded to a third-degree felony, which is punishable up to 10 years, or a $20,000 fine. Now, a lot of these laws in other states, in Ohio in general, they make it so misdemeanors are now felonies. Now, they're low-level felonies, but they're still felonies. That's a big thing that a lot of these laws, including the one in Florida, are doing. They're making it so laws that are already on the books that are misdemeanors are now felonies, which is, just a bit of an overreaction. Ohio also has a few laws that have been introduced that are still pending. One that struck me, which is almost the exact same from other states. I want to say Kentucky is another state that did it. Yeah, Kentucky and Ohio, and I'm sure others, are introducing new penalties to protesters who, quote, taunt the police. So this says it would newly criminalize taunting an on-duty police officer with reckless disregard as to whether taunting the officer diverts his attention. Penalties for this offense would be classified under obstructing justice, and it would range from 90 days in jail to a $750 fine. Ohio does have another law that is pending right now that would be for protesters who are blocking public traffic. And who do not have a permit to be there. They could be charged with 6 months in jail, $1,000 fine, all the way up to a fifth-degree felony, 1 year in prison, $2,500 fine, and it also has more distinct definitions for what a riot is. Now that one, I don't really see a problem with. Any sort of protest that turns violent definitely should be condemned. But, this is clearly in response to not only what happened on January 6th, but also the protests across the country over the summer due to the George Floyd murder. So that's, I believe, what these lawmakers are trying to stop, right? The mass panic and riots that we've had over the summer. So Ohio, whatever. But big ones that I want to focus on that I believe have laws that are way out of hand are Iowa, Indiana, Minnesota, Florida, and Kentucky. So in Iowa, there are laws making its way through the state legislature that would make it so if a driver comes in contact with protesters and hits protesters with their vehicle, they could be granted immunity. That, to me, is insanity, because we've seen the videos of that dude in the pickup truck driving through a crowd of protesters that were on a highway. Now, granted, the protesters did not have a permit. I don't really understand why you need a permit to protest, but if you're blocking the public traffic, then okay, maybe you could be, escorted off to like a pedestrian area, like a median or a sidewalk. But it doesn't give anyone the right or an excuse to drive through them with your fucking car. That is insane. Another thing that the state of Iowa is doing that a few other states are doing as well, the state has the authority, if these bills pass, to strip a local government of state funding if they decrease their police budget. Clearly trying to combat the one phrase that really became evident out of the whole summer of protests and riots: defund the police. Now, however you feel about defund the police, some people feel like they should be defunded, other people feel like the funds should be reallocated. But this Iowa law is saying that if a local government decreases a police budget, the state will strip them of certain state funds. Now we're talking about Iowa here, and I would imagine Iowa probably has some pretty small towns with not a whole lot of people and not a big police force. So if a town in Iowa decides to maybe they're a little bit more of a progressive town, and they want to take a little bit of the police budget away and give it to like a public utility, or trying to get broadband to places that don't have it, right? Infrastructure like that, power lines, fiber optic cable, things like that. The state can just come in and be like, no, sorry, we're not going to give you your state funds because you decreased your police department. That's pretty scary, if you ask me. So Indiana has a law pending right now. It was introduced January 12th, 2021, and it was approved by the Senate on February 16th. So the state Senate. So that means it needs to go to the House and then signed by the governor if it were to pass. And it has a kind of scary provision in there, specifically for journalists. It says that if a journalist, for instance, who stays at the scene of a protest that is deemed unlawful assembly and does not immediately report unlawful behavior, could face 6 months in jail for enabling a riot. That is deeply troubling. That is deeply worrying, because the moment when states or the federal government start attacking journalists and getting in the way of them doing their jobs, which is reporting what's happening on the ground, we run into a whole sort of new problems that we should not have in this country. The First Amendment clearly says the freedom of the press, and sometimes the press has to go where the action is. And it is not the press's job to call the police on people who are protesting and maybe doing something unlawful. It is their job to get it out to the public. It is their job to let the public know what is happening. It is not their job to report crimes. Now, a lot of the time, with their reporting, crimes are reported. But it is not a journalist's direct responsibility to call the police and say, hey, there are people who are unlawfully assembling, if I'm using the language of the bill. So Minnesota has a few of these provisions that are pending as well. Rewrites to laws that are already on the books and introducing new legislation. And some of them, there's one in particular that is very troubling. So it says this is from the Minnesota Daily. It's just in a local newspaper in Minnesota, in Minneapolis. A proposed bill would make protesters convicted of an offense ineligible for student loans. And it's not just student loans. It says a person convicted of a criminal offense related to a person's legal conduct at a protest, demonstration, rally, civil unrest, or march is ineligible for any type of student loan, grant, or assistance, including but not limited to college student loans and grants. Other forms of state financial aid include food stamps, rent assistance, and unemployment benefits. That is flat out an attack on the working poor and the working class. Easily. Because those are the people who most of the time are putting on and participating in not just the murder of George Floyd protests, but protests all across the country, because they are the most oppressed group of people in the country, the working poor and the working class. And for a state government to say, hey, we do not agree with your protest, we're going to convict you of this bullshit crime, and now you can't have rent assistance, you can't have your food stamps, and other forms of financial aid. It says here that thousands of college students across the city of Minneapolis were participated in protests, and a lot of them were arrested. Now, the ones that were arrested for rioting and looting and burning a cop car, they should be arrested, flat out. But the ones that were arrested just simply for being there, those cases are still going on. They're not settled yet. And if these laws pass, those college students could be stripped of their student loans, which is, I don't even have words for that. That is egregious. That is fucked up. So we already talked about Kentucky and Ohio having the same taunting a police law. But a thing in Kentucky that I wanted to highlight was that taunting a police officer law. There's a provision in that Kentucky law that says if somebody is convicted of that crime, they have to sit in jail mandatory 48 hours. And in the state of Kentucky, rape, murder, and arson do not automatically carry that punishment. You could make bail that day, and you could get out, and you could await your court date. Well, with taunting the police, it is said that you are required to sit in some sort of facility for at least 48 hours. Again, what are we doing? What are we doing? Kentucky, what's going on here? That's not probably a good idea. That's a little much, I think. Now I want to get into Florida. Florida is kind of, from what I'm seeing online and on Twitter and people who have voiced their opinion about this, Florida seems to be leading the charge. Florida is imposing harsher punishments to already existing bills, turning misdemeanors into felonies, creating new felonies, and making it so you can't be released on bail without seeing a judge first. Now that's tricky because if you commit a crime and you make bail that day, like somebody bails you out, say your bail's $10,000 and somebody bails you out, you get a couple weeks to be free and await a court date to see a judge. In Florida, if this law passes, simply by protesting and you're arrested, you could have to sit in jail, mandatory, see a judge before you're allowed to leave. Now, let's say a protest happens on a Saturday, right? It's a holiday weekend. Everything's closed on the following Monday. You get arrested Saturday night. You're in jail Saturday night, all day Sunday, and all day Monday until you can see a judge. They give you a $1,000 fine, and they tell you to go home. That is wild to me, that you're going to make this a felony and then mandatory. Florida and what was it, Kentucky? Yeah, Florida and Kentucky are making it so you cannot leave until you see a judge. In Kentucky's case, 48-hour minimum. That is not good. It's mind-blowing to me. It is literally an attack on the First Amendment. So this video might have been all over the place, but I just sort of threw it together because I really feel like I needed to speak about this as fast as possible. I found out about these bills, 81 in 34 states in just this year alone that have been introduced, is in my view, a legitimate concern. It should be a legitimate concern to a normal, everyday American, because this is a extremely slippery slope. When we talk about free speech, when we talk about the First Amendment in general, the freedom to publicly demonstrate, the freedom to say whatever you want within reason, and the freedom of the press. But this is something that I'm not really hearing a whole lot of mainstream media outlets talk about, that the fact that 34 states have introduced 81 bills so far, labeling them as anti-riot bills, but really what they are is states, and if enough states pass them, eventually the federal government being able to put a tighter stranglehold on everyday Americans, which this country was founded on the people speaking for themselves, rising up and saying to the government that oversees them, no, you're wrong. This is our land. This is a democracy. And if we have a problem with something, we're going to tell you. And for these 34 states to say, you know what, fuck you, we're going to make these laws, so we're going to upgrade misdemeanors to felonies. We're going to force you to stay in jail longer than necessary. And in some cases, we're going to bar you from being able to run for public office. We're going to bar you from having assistance on unemployment, on housing, food stamps, student loans. It's just more of a power grab for the elite, you know? And it really gets under my skin that they're trying to just kind of slide these under the rug, and no one's really talking about it is the big thing. So I will keep my eye on the Ohio bills for sure, because that's my home state, and just the greater Midwest area. I'll probably see Florida too, because when something happens in Florida, you always know about it. But I'll keep my eye on these and give you an update if any of them pass or when any of them get rejected. So until next time, thanks for watching, and subscribe, and I'll see you when I see you.